cannon will be replaced.
You're right about that, big guy.
A little overprotective of your food containers? Get Gladware. Containers you can use and use and use, and at around 50 cents each, still afford to lose. Now in the Glad section.
You can also get reliable forecasts from the Weather Channel through this radio station or newspaper. Stay with the Weather Channel for up-to-the-minute coverage of Hurricane Bonnie. Get the potential impact and be prepared. Watch Weather Center on the hour and...
Really big deals are at Mrs. G's on washers, dryers, VCRs, big screen TVs, CD players, refrigerators, microwaves, and much more at unmatched savings.
How do we do it?
With unmatched buying power on over 48 brand names.
We must make room. We're remodeling, and we must sell off floor samples and inventory. Huge price reductions. Buy now and save.
So the next time you think of appliances or electronics, remember,
The big deals are at Mrs. G's.
1 block south of the junction of 295 and 95 on Route 1 in Lawrenceville.
Okay, in this complex, he's here.
Okay.
You go down the strip, you take a left, and then a right on that street. I don't remember the name of the street, but there's that shop on the corner. Okay, then you take another left, and the road forks, but you go straight.
Straight? How can I go straight if there's a sugar shaker in front of me?
The road forks, but the main road is straight. Then you take a left, and then a right, and he's on the left, but you gotta go around because it's one way. You can't turn that way.
Get out of here.
Experiencingthegardenstate.com now.
Tropical weather systems are affected by so many variables.
We constantly monitor the situation.
If someone is safer by watching the Weather Channel, that's what it's all about.
Right now, it's your local forecast on the Weather Channel.
This storm watch, of course, focusing in on the tropical activity going on out there, including Hurricane Bonnie, which is just on the coastline right now of North Carolina. In fact, the latest information we have available is at 33.6 north, 77.9 west. That puts it about 45 miles south of Wilmington with its northward movement at about 10 miles an hour, indicating that the center of that eye should be on board into North Carolina within the next several hours, already to the northern fringe of the eye, probably already on the North Carolina coast. If you've got a home barometer, check it out, 28.41. Pretty low, deep pressure, isn't it? Hurricane warnings continue in effect from Cape Romaine all the way up to Chicotee, Virginia, illustrating that you need to make sure any last-minute preparations are done as the hurricane's now coming on board with in excess of hurricane force winds. 75 to Brunswick Airport reported a 76 gust to 89 miles an hour in the last hour. Tropical storm force winds felt all the way inland to around Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina at this particular hour. We also have heavy surf that will continue along the eastern seaboard. Swimmers and surfers are not advised to be out there in this kind of rough weather. Latest radar perspective, again, a kind of a ragged eye going on right in here, but also the northern fringe of that brushing around the Wilmington area will continue to lift on northward. There's a satellite perspective illustrating the cloudiness and the bands of precipitation wrapping around this, as well as a visible satellite shot illustrating the northern fringe of the eye, kind of rugged, but will continue to move on off towards the north. Danielle, another hurricane we're talking about, Looks like it should pass north of the island. It has shown a little bit more of a ragged nature in the last couple of frames, illustrating the last couple of hours, a perspective of how that looks. Danielle, compared to the United States, many days away, and it is expected to intensify a little bit over the next couple of days.
We're monitoring Hurricane Bonnie as it makes landfall along the Carolina coast. Get its potential impact and be prepared. Watch Weather Center after your local forecast.
This is one of those new Volvos with all-wheel drive, right?
Yes. It's our newest safety feature, designed to help keep you out of an accident.
So how come you don't put it on all your cars?
All our cars.
Like Subaru does.
Subaru.
Every Subaru we make comes with the safety of all-wheel drive. Every wagon, every coupe, every sedan.
So only one Volvo has all-wheel drive, but they all have cup holders.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Jim Cantori in Morehead City, North Carolina. Well, here in the mainland, we have just lost power where we're at as winds have gusted to near 70 miles an hour. You can see on our tower cam that the trees are swaying. A lot of them still standing around here. That's the good news, but we have had some reports of damage. We'll give you a full update in just a moment.
Thanks for joining us. We're live here in the Forecast Center of the Weather Channel. For Weather Center, I'm Janetta Jones. I'm joined now by John Hope, our hurricane expert. John, we are looking at a landfall very, very soon here.
Very, very soon. By late this afternoon, I think the eye will really be ashore. It's not there yet. We looked at the pressure out of Wilmington, and it's about 980 millibars, and the pressure in the center of the storm is down 962 or so. So it's got a ways to go yet before that eye gets there.
But we have definitely been feeling the effects for quite some time.
Indeed,
now.
we have. There have been some pretty gusty winds on shore already.
All right, let's check out the radar because we can show everyone how those bands of heavy rain have already been moving in. I do have flood warnings to report to you in Bladen County as well as Brunswick County, Columbus, Hanover, and Pender counties. We've had reports from spotters of over 5 inches of rain in some of the intersections there in the Wilmington area. We've had reports of some big-time flooding problems. In fact, water up to the windows on cars on Bayshore Drive in the Ogden area. So that gives you a feel for just how much rainfall we have been seeing. As we look at the satellite picture, John, what can you tell us?
Well, we can see the center of circulation right about here. We don't have a well-formed eye. We can tell that on the radar, and we're getting that kind of information from the aircraft as well. But that is the center of circulation. A very, very large hurricane with winds, hurricane force winds, 115 miles or so. Mostly at sea, I would say. We know the hurricane force winds do not extend inland that far.
Okay, as of yet. Want to show everyone the latest information moving north at 10 miles per hour, so it did slow just a little bit this afternoon. Wind still at 115 miles per hour. That puts it at a Category 3 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson scale.
It is a Category 3. We haven't seen any winds as strong as that on land. Now, we've had gusts over 100 miles an hour. We have not seen on land anywhere yet sustained winds of 115.
We have had reports of power outages, trees down, and that kind of thing.
There will be a lot of trees down and a lot of power outages.
Now, when you have all of this battering on the shore for an extended period of time, does that make it even worse once it does make landfall?
Well, on the beaches, yes, because a lot of the structures maybe get weakened a little bit with the battering that occurs before the main part of the hurricane gets in there.
Okay. I'm told that we can now go live to Bill Keneally. He is standing by in Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. Bill, can you tell us what you're experiencing?
Well, Janetta, I'm glad I'm not on the beach, I can tell you that much. But behind me, you can see what has fallen prey to Hurricane Bonnie. This tree, this is a live oak tree. And one would have to guess this thing has got to be at least 50 years old, which means it has withstood Hurricane Hazel, Hurricane Diana, Hurricane Bertha, Hurricane Fran, but it has succumbed to Hurricane Bonnie, and we're going to guess that the peak wind that we've witnessed here is about 90 miles per hour. John, it's hard to say. I think the winds are starting to come around. They're getting rather chaotic. It is starting to brighten up. Not sure if there's any eye on the horizon out there, but we would like to catch a break from this unrelenting wind, I can tell you that much.
Okay, thanks so much. Bill Keneally reporting live from Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. We'll be checking back with him in just about half an hour. Again, I'm joined by John Hope, our hurricane expert here at the Weather Channel. John, you were just handed some new information.
Yes, I was just checking it over here, it's about the same at the center of the hurricane, located now 33.7, 78.0, and that's only 40 miles at this hour south of Wilmington, North Carolina.
Okay. As we look at the satellite vantage point, you can see that the eye itself is not quite on shore yet, but as John alluded to, that will happen shortly.
In the next few hours, I should say.
Okay. What can we expect, John, as far as the storm surge is concerned?
Well, we're looking for storm surge somewhere in the range on the beaches, 9 to 11 feet. That's the official forecast for Hurricane Center. That looks pretty good to us. We also wanted to mention on the sounds, there's going to be flooding on the river, on the western end of the sounds, up the rivers, up the Neuse River and up the Pamlico River. There'll be some tidal flooding there as well. Not as much, we think, as we had in Hurricane Fran.
And this is going to be affecting folks in North Carolina, obviously the worst. How about a little farther north into the Tidewater region?
Well, into the Tidewater area as well. Now, the center is going to be over land for a number of hours before it gets to the Tidewater area up in Virginia. That should allow, among other things, for it to weaken. But in the meantime, there's going to be a strong onshore wind persisting for a good many hours before the center of the hurricane does get there. So that's going to be driving water into Hampton Roads.
Okay, not a good scenario at all.
No.
I believe we can go now to Jim Cantori. He's standing by live in Morehead City. Jim, what are you experiencing?
Well, Janetta, we actually are getting a little bit of light rain now. The winds have just stayed up, and we easily gust 50, 60 miles an hour, much like what Bill had earlier on today, and obviously nowhere near the strength that he had. But we just lost some power here where I'm staying in Morehead City, and that obviously is not good news, because that means we possibly have more trees down on power lines or transformers that have blown with these very strong winds. The highest wind gust I have heard is across the Sound. I'm here at Bogue Sound, and that's over toward Atlantic Beach. You're looking south now, and you can see the tremendous chop that we have on the water as winds have gone from northeast to east and now out of the east-southeast. We have not had a southerly wind, which would really flood this side of the Sound. No doubt earlier on when we had the north-northeast winds, there was tremendous flooding on the northern side of the Barrier Island out there. And we did get a report as well of some tremendous waves banging in at the time of high tide, right around 10:30, 11 o'clock, down at Atlantic Beach. So they've had tremendous wave action as well as winds gusting to 85 miles an hour. But we don't see, from our vantage point, the type of damage that Bill is talking about down to the south. And of course, we're farther away from the center and the eye wall as well. Let me show you our tower cam here. This is looking off toward the west, and you can see how the trees are being blown and they're swaying around. The winds not as sustained. I mean, we're barely sustained at 30 miles an hour, but we do occasionally gust 50, even up to 60 miles an hour. So we're not getting that tremendous force of the wind that they've had downstate. But then again, the hurricane is still a ways away, and we anticipate the worst to come as we go later on this afternoon. Let's go back to Janetta.
All right, thanks so much, Jim Cantori, reporting live from Morehead City, North Carolina. Once again, we're back here in the studio with our hurricane expert, John Hope. We want to talk a little bit about how the winds extend outward over 200 miles, at least the tropical storm force winds.
And Janetta, right now I think we're seeing the winds, those winds extending out that far, mainly toward the east. As you can see here, they don't extend as far inland.
Okay, but that will change as it moves a little farther.
Well, it will, but still you won't have as strong of winds inland as you have over the open water.
And that's good news.
It is.
All right, want to show everyone some of the current winds that have been reported, up to 67 miles per hour near Wilmington. Of course, that's where all the flooding has been taking place. We do have a tornado watch in effect for this particular region. As always, severe weather is a possibility.
It is a possibility of a landfalling hurricane, and right along the banks of North Carolina, the coastal areas, that's where we might get one.
Okay, do want to get to the forecast now. In the immediate future, in the next 3, 4, 5 hours, what do you expect, John?
Well, it's just going to go north very slowly, maybe tonight begin to nudge a little bit toward the northeast. Basically, the center, once it gets inland this afternoon, is going to be over land in North Carolina. Moving on up toward the Tidewater area or to the west of it, but it won't be up there yet for quite a while.
And what can we expect into tomorrow and the next day for folks even in the northeast?
Well, what we're a little bit afraid of here, and as far as the mid-Atlantic states, is that this is going to move rather slowly. This is going to mean a long period of battering by the waves, a long period of very heavy rain. And if it moves as slow as there's some indications that it might delay the situation up a little farther north. The forecast eventually is for this to curve out to sea after it gets north of the Tidewater area, but we'll have to wait and see how that pans out.
And of course it will weaken, as you said, once it's over land.
It will weaken over land. They always weaken over land, and this one will too.
Okay, so that's something that we can look forward to. Recapping now, we have a major hurricane, a Category 3 on the Saffir-Simpson scale, Hurricane Bonnie, about to make landfall on the North Carolina coast. And of course, folks in North Carolina have already been feeling the effects with flooding. We have flash flood watches and warnings in effect, and a tornado watch. We'll continue to monitor the situation for you. If you have any other questions and you're away from your television set, you can tap into the Weather Channel's online service at weather.com. Now back to the studio.
Thanks a lot, Janetta. Good afternoon. This Weather Center is going to update you now on what's happening elsewhere across the country. And sunshine's making its way into the northeast after a rainy morning, but the picture isn't as bright in the northern plains. Severe weather is possible today. Here's a look at the radar satellite composite, where over North Dakota there have been a few severe thunderstorms this afternoon. Not any widespread outbreak, but with an upper level disturbance moving across the northern plains, look out for unstable conditions and rapidly changing conditions, particularly across the northernmost counties of North Dakota. Frontal systems adding to the map here. There is a weak cold front pushing across the northeastern quadrant of the U.S. That's the leading edge of somewhat cooler, somewhat drier, and more stable air. And that frontal system will help to trigger some scattered showers and thunderstorms across parts of the northeast, primarily coastal sections, as it moves on in toward Boston, New York City, and Philadelphia. Here's a closer view of the radar through the area. Salisbury, Maryland, getting a thunder shower.
Pressure's 960.
At this time, you're looking at pictures showing you what's happening in the area around Wilmington, North Carolina, in the area where Hurricane Bonnie is battering the coast as it moves northward, coming toward the North Carolina coast. And one of the biggest concerns at this hour is flooding rain. And the rains are continuing to spiral around Hurricane Bonnie as the storm is now ever closer to the coast. We'll update you in just a moment on its particular position. Good afternoon. I'm Dan Atkinson here in the Forecast Center as the Weather Channel continues to monitor the progress of Hurricane Bonnie, which is, of course, a dangerous storm, still a Category 3 storm with maximum sustained winds of 115 miles per hour. Let's take a look at that radar again, showing you the spiral rain band circulating around the center of Bonnie, which has yet to make it on shore. Some of the strong winds associated with the approaching eye of the storm are battering coastal areas. Winds have been gusting at times to 70, 75 miles per hour, even higher estimates along the Carolina coast. And we have in position 3 of our Weather Channel on-camera meteorologists. We'll be checking in with them shortly at their various vantage points. Want to let you see here the satellite view, which shows the proximity of this large system as it makes its way ever closer toward the coast. And it is now south of Wilmington, North Carolina, and moving in that same direction toward the north slowly. Well, we are going to be taking a look now at what is happening at Wrightsville Beach. Bill Keneally is standing by there. Bill, what's happening where you are?
Oh, okay. Hi, Dan. We continue to watch the wind starting to wind down some. I can't hear you, but I'll tell you what I'm witnessing out here now. The winds, which have been from the northeast all day long, appear to be turning now a little more in the counterclockwise fashion around to the north and eventually, I think, to the northwest, as it looks like the eye wall is probably to our east or maybe southeast right now. Hopefully the winds on the backside will not be quite as bad, however. As you can see, we've had a fair amount of damage in the immediate area. This is a very large live oak tree. Well, let me say that again. It was a very large live oak tree. Had to be at least 50 years old, so it did withstand Hurricanes Hazel, Diana, Bertha, and Fran, but it was no match now for Hurricane Bonnie. The minivan in the back is, well, we'll just say it's totaled, okay? So there was a lot of damage incurred here. Power is out, of course. The phones are out, cables out. It could have been worse, and I suspect it probably is worse, though, on the Barrier Islands. Any news on the Barrier Islands, though, is just very, very sketchy. Back to you, Dan.
And thanks a lot, Bill. We will be checking back with you there at Wrightsville Beach. We are joined here in the Weather Channel Forecast Center by hurricane expert John Hope. John, the rains are already causing some flooding problems, and We have reports from southeastern North Carolina of 5 counties at least under flood warnings, generally the Wilmington area on westward as the rain pours down.
They are causing problems, and they're going to cause a lot more because it's moving very slowly, and it's going to rain for extended periods over some of these areas.
And not only is the rain coming down, but the sea is coming up, right?
The sea is coming up. It should be about as high down around near where the eye is now as it's going to get, or will be, say, in the next couple of hours. But yes, the seas have come up a whole lot. Those barrier islands, I'm sure, are taking a lot of water.
And you have a new position report, I understand.
We do have. At 4 o'clock, the Hurricane Center just filled us in here, 33.9 north and 78.0 west. And Dan, that's only 25 miles south of Wilmington, North Carolina. And it's moving pretty slowly, and the Air Force tells us is eye diameter now 17 miles. So if you take half of that 17 miles, there's still a few miles to go before all that northern eye wall gets on shore.
Well, as the storm makes that move inland, of course, the hurricane warnings continue in effect from Cape Romaine, South Carolina, up to Chincoteague, Virginia, and hurricane watch from Chincoteague up to Cape Henlopen, Delaware. This is still battering a very large area, isn't it?
It is, because it's been out there now for a long time, and those waves are coming in there now. Some of these were generated even days ago. And so they have already been set in motion. There's no stopping them. They're just going to be there.
Now, I've heard you say earlier in the afternoon that very often when a hurricane comes ashore, what is back out over the ocean is not necessarily as impressive as what's coming in over the land. But there's still a lot of this storm that's quite impressive.
Oh, yes. Sometimes the south side doesn't amount to very much, but this one here, now this might rotate around, but we've got some very heavy precipitation south. The hours right here, and this heavy band of precipitation to the south is very, very heavy rain.
Well, some of those who are standing in the rain at this point are 2 of our on-camera meteorologists from the Weather Channel. Jim Cantori is at Morehead City, North Carolina, and at Nags Head. Jeff Morrow is standing by. Jim, let's start with you and find out what's happening from your vantage point.
Well, again, Dan, the big story here continues to be the wind. We had that one band of precipitation, probably got over about 2 inches of rain, and then it's been just kind of a steady intermittent light rain and mostly wind, occasionally gusting 50, even 60 miles an hour. And believe it or not, there's even been a little brightening at times. But, I caution folks here to not let their guard down, because we still have that eastern semicircle to come north with the northward moving storm, and those winds in that are still very, very strong. So that's what we're going to deal with later on this afternoon, right into tonight, especially given the slow movement. Behind me, you can see the chop on the sound here. This is Bogue Sound, and we're on the mainland now, so you're looking off toward the south, and no doubt the wind continues to cause some very, very choppy seas out there, and I can't imagine what that barrier island has been taking all day. The good news is we have had mostly a northeast or east-northeast, east-southeast wind, and not so much a south wind. If you remember the Crystal Coast here, it almost faces due east-west, like Long Island Sound. So until you get that south wind, that would maximize the surge. Let me show you our mass cam here. You can see the trees swinging around and swaying around. We have not seen too much debris from my vantage point. However, we have lost power where we are. We've heard of winds gusting to 85 miles an hour on Atlantic Beach, which is across onto the barrier island there. And no doubt there is some debris down and some power outages as you head back toward Morehead City, or at least the downtown area, which is about 10 miles off to the east. So we're going to still batten down the hatches here, and no doubt we will deal with that eastern semicircle as we go through the next several hours. Well, where they're going to deal with some worse weather? Up in eastern North Carolina, on the farther northern end of the Outer Banks. Let's go to Jeff Morrow in Nags Head. Jeff?
All right, Jim. Well, so far, so good here on the Outer Banks. Really not very much effect from Hurricane Bonnie, except a lot of high surf. And what we're going to do is pan out here so that you can see the surf extending well down the coast. We're looking south now, which would be in the direction generally of where Bonnie is, down toward the Cape Hatteras area, where the winds there have been gusting well up over 40 miles an hour, and down toward Ocracoke Island, things bad as well. You may be able to see here that some of the kids out on the beach have kind of stamped out in the sand there, "Hello, Bonnie." They may be the only ones that'll be welcoming Bonnie. If Bonnie does come here, I think most folks on the Outer Banks would like it to come in a much diminished state. In other words, if it does come on shore down around Wilmington, unfortunately it's doing a lot of damage there. But on the flip side of that, that may be good news for the Outer Banks. If it weakens it enough, maybe the effects here won't be quite as bad. There'll be wind, there'll be rain, but we're hoping that maybe it will weaken before it makes it this far north. We'll keep you updated here no matter what happens. Now let's go back to you, Dan.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. And Jim will be checking back with you.
And we are continuing our discussion here in the Forecast Center with the Weather Channel hurricane expert John Hope. And John, we were talking earlier about the heavy rain associated with Hurricane Bonnie. The forecast of 5 to 10 inches is dependent on the storm speed, right?
Yeah, it is to a large extent. If it moves slower, then the rain could be more. And Jeff is exactly right about the intensity, too. You know, once that center is inland, we know it's going to weaken. And as the center is going to stay inland quite a while over eastern North Carolina, this hurricane will be weaker for sure by the time it gets up to the Tidewater area of Virginia.
Well, at this point, it is certainly packing some strong winds, and as we can see here on the wind profile, the tropical storm force winds are extending well out from the center. And in fact, I believe we have
the 230 miles, and the hurricane winds 115 miles. And Dan, they really extend out farther now over the sea than they do over land, and that's always the case because once the winds begin to feel the land, then the winds are going to diminish some. They won't be as strong over land as over the water.
Let's take a look at the winds as they're actually being recorded this over the last hour. And of course, some of the windiest conditions have been around the Wilmington area. Right now, the latest gust 67 miles per hour. I think we've seen gusts up to hurricane force, haven't we?
Wilmington itself had 72. I didn't see quite 75. Maybe they did. I didn't see it.
But it is certainly getting a battering as the eye continues to move slowly toward the north. And of course, as is typical with a landfalling hurricane, there is that potential for tornadoes. There is a watch in effect.
We do have a tornado watch, and this is where the watches always occur on the east side, almost always on the east side of where the eye comes to shore. Not generally right in the eye or the eye wall, but in the rain bands that are a little